The luxury watch manufacturer, Kurono, has decided to take measures to stamp out flipping and resell within the luxury watch market. I'm going to talk about the measures they've undertaken, and in essence they boil down to cancelling warranties, and whether or not those are the types of things that could work more broadly for other manufacturers, or whether they're even likely to work for Kurono themselves. Now, if you have any thoughts about this, or any thoughts about speculation or resale in these watch markets, let me know that in the comments below, because it would be interesting to hear your thoughts as well. And otherwise, it would be great if you check out my website, luxuryprofessor.com, where I've got some of my watches for sale in case you're interested in checking those out. Okay, so with that extended preamble out of the way, let's have a look at the new Seiji watch, to which these restrictions and resale and flipping restrictions ultimately apply. And what we've got on this first screen is some revisions to the allocation process for the Seiji watch, which is the subject of these resale and flipping restrictions. The underlying revisions here pertain to a prior restriction they had. Previously, they were only going to give allocations to women. They have now relaxed that restriction. And this is likely because there was rather some disquiet amongst the watch buying community about their, let's face it, gender-based sales process, and the possibility that in many markets that would be of dubious legality. For example, in Australia, if they were to only sell watches to women, then that would be blatantly illegal and a violation of the Sex Discrimination Act. In other markets, things would function differently, of course. And Kurono is based in Japan, so obviously the law in Japan would be driving this. Nevertheless, they've revised that, and at the moment, anyone can get allocation, with the initial allocations going to existing customers, and then it being open to the general public thereafter. So that is worth clearing up to begin with. We can now look at the Seiji watch itself, and you can see immediately here a picture about what the watch ultimately looks like. It has a rather nice turquoise-based dial. I think it's a reasonably attractive watch, not necessarily one that I'm super excited about, but certainly an attractive one nevertheless. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what Kurono is doing here. So in terms of our blurb about the watch, we can see some rather splendiferous words about it. It says, the new Kurono Seiji is limited to 500 pieces. It's a 500-piece release, in a celadon-like blue-green lacquer dial finish, in Kurono's iconic 37mm case. Positioned for female collectors, Kurono Seiji is a conscious effort to increase the diversity of Kurono collectors. 50% allocations will be reserved for Kurono customers and existing customers. 50% of allocations will be for public sale. There will no longer be a need for a nomination process, i.e. going back on that sale only to women that they had before. So there will no longer be a need for a nomination process, as previously announced, and we will accept expressions of interest from all. We would like to emphasize that our intentions are to welcome more female collectors into the Kurono family. It is our hope that Seiji will be largely bought by, or bought for, and go towards female collectors. The new Kurono Seiji represents only the second time we're launching a solid lacquer dial finish, etc., much the same as before, but again emphasizing here the relaxation of the restriction that it would only sell to female collectors. We can now continue on to have a look more broadly at the restrictions in relation to flippers and resellers. So the restrictions in relation to resellers are right down here. Basically what it says here in the bit that is in red text is, warranty or service claims within the first 6 months of receiving Seiji by anyone other than the original buyer on record will be rejected. Warranty for any Seiji discovered on the resale market within the first 6 months will be voided. So we've got these two comments here that are seemingly aimed at stamping out flippers. It remains to be seen what exactly happens if it is bought as a gift. For example, say you buy it for, in this case, if they're targeting women, you buy it for your mother, for example. Then your mother would be the one who ultimately receives it. But you might have bought it initially because you were buying it as a gift. Surely there would be a way for you to record the gift recipient so that that gift recipient can also claim a warranty. That would make the most sense, but it seems that that is not what they're doing right here. In any case, that might be something they might be able to iron out in the back end. They probably should have clarified that a little bit. And allowing gift recipients isn't exactly going to open up the flipping and resale market, because you would have like one gift recipient on record. Or if, for example, it were to go into an estate, because, for example, that person happened to pass away, then surely that person's estate could ultimately end up taking possession of it, and then it would go to the person who inherits it. Whatever the case might be, it's not going to open the floodgates to a resale or flipper market just by allowing gift recipients. But that's another issue entirely. And then, like it says here, warranty will be voided for any watch found to be on the resale market. So that's effectively what Kurono, is doing in relation to flippers for the Seiji watch. Now, the question is this likely to work for Kurono? Will it actually succeed? Because we've really got a couple of issues. Should they do this? Will it succeed? Could it work for other manufacturers? So let's first focus on, could this work for Kurono before even considering whether they even should do this. So whether it could work for Kurono is, to my mind, a little bit dubious. I say it's a little bit dubious, at least in part, because actually policing it is going to be very difficult. Say, for example, one were to buy these watches. So you buy a Seiji watch, then you want to go and flip it. Now, if you were to want to go and flip it, when you're selling it, you could sell it under a company, you could sell it via a third party, you could sell it under a pseudonym. There are myriad ways one could go out and sell this watch that don't necessarily involve you putting personal identification onto the watch. Furthermore, when you're listing it for sale, you often will blur out the serial number. That's usually in an attempt to defeat counterfeiters, but nevertheless, the serial number is often not in an ad. So, Kurono even detecting who is selling a watch is going to be incredibly difficult. They could try to run a sting operation, which would be labor intensive. So they could see a Seiji for sale, and one of their employees could go and try to buy it, try to get information about the serial. Then when we've got that information, they could go and cancel the warranty. They could try to do this, but generally as an astute seller, knowing that warranties might be voided, you'd probably take steps to mitigate that. And also, if it's a flipper and they're being a little bit duplicitous, they might not even care that the warranty is voided. That's the first issue practically. Second issue is, these watches should not break within 6 months. So say it were to be flipped, and then there was subsequent owner. That owner of the watch should not need to make a warranty claim within the first 6 months. If Kurono seriously thinks their watch is going to break in 6 months, then to my mind, they really shouldn't be in the watchmaking business. A high-end watch should not break within 6 months. Now, there might be workmanship issues, those things happen in limited production models, but that's not a warranty claim. It arrives on your doorstep, and there's some issue with the finish, then you send it back and it gets fixed. A flipper who ultimately intended to flip it would do this just as much as anyone else. So the warranty issue won't come into play here. It would only come into play afterwards. And to my mind here, it really shouldn't be breaking within 6 months. So the amount of times this is even going to come into play would, to my mind, be incredibly limited. The third issue that need to come about is consumer protections. Now, this is a tricky one because Kurono is selling from Japan, so the amount of consumer protection one's going to get when buying overseas really isn't going to be super large. But this would apply more generally if Kurono had a distribution center in another location. So say they had a distribution center in Australia, then under consumer law, the distribution center is likely going to need to honor warranties to some extent. Now, it is a little bit tricky here, because say, for example, you have a manufacturer. Manufacturer then sells to party A, which is say, for example, you or me. And then we go and sell to another party, that third party. Now here, that flipper would be able to go back to the manufacturer regardless of whether they flipped the watch, because the manufacturer is under a statutory requirement to make sure their goods are fit for service. It is not legal for them to say, no warranties. That simply is not legal, nor is it binding. As a result, they're not going to be able to say there's no warranty at all, because while their explicit express warranty might not hold, they are still warranting that their goods are fit for service. And as a result, if their goods are not fit for service, then they will have to do a repair or a refund if they were to go through a local distribution center. Now, it does become tricky when the watch is flipped, because here the flipper is the one to whom they'll be able to get that warranty. So generally here the third-party buyer will need to go back to the flipper, and then the flipper will need to repair it. If the flipper is a corporation or a major seller, then that major seller will have a reputational need to do this. If it's just some random, then it's unlikely that that warranty would be operationalized. Nevertheless, it is a restriction on what Kurono could do in relation to voiding warranties, and a restriction on the efficacy of doing that voiding. So to my mind, this is unlikely to have that much of an effect, really. Then you add on to this that say it were to reduce flipping, then the amount of stock on the market for sale will have gone down because some people might have been deterred. By virtue of supply decreasing, the price of these resold watches might actually be higher. It might actually increase by virtue of these measures. So as a result, it might have a counterintuitive and slightly converse effect on the resale market. The next issue is, that notwithstanding, should Kurono do this? Now, that's really a normative decision. It really depends on whether or not you think there's a market for flippers. I personally have no particular problem with watch flippers because they create liquidity in the market, and by virtue of them propping up prices, it helps to support the price of watches more generally. And I think that's important because when you buy an expensive watch, you want to be able to exit it whenever you want in case you need the money for, say, it's medical bills, or you want to buy a house, or you want to buy a car, or you want to make an investment. Being able to exit your watch is actually incredibly attractive. So restricting the flipping market, I think I'm not particularly in agreement with. So normatively for me, I would not agree with these measures. Different people might feel differently about this, but it's ultimately a value judgment that you would need to make. And let me know your thoughts about that in the comments below. It would be interesting to hear your thoughts about these flippers. The next issue is, could this be done for other markets? Rolex, for example. Could Rolex roll this out? Basic answer is no, because the issues I mentioned with Kurono are even bigger for Rolex. For Rolex, A, they sell a lot more models to a lot more people, and a lot more of them are very similar. It's going to be incredibly difficult for Rolex to work out who is selling what in the secondary market and to just track everything down. Because usually people won't publicize the serial number they're selling under. They might sell it under a pseudonym. They might sell it under a company. So it's going to be super difficult to track down who is selling what. Now, clearly on Facebook forums, when you use your own name, sure, they could track that down. But on other platforms, they would have no idea. So as a result, I think that with companies like Rolex, this wouldn't work at all. Furthermore, the issue about consumer guarantees is amply there with Rolex, because Rolex, even more than Kurono, is going to have local distributors in locations where there are going to be consumer guarantees. So for that reason as well, it simply won't work. So a whole lot of practical and also perhaps legal reasons for why avoiding a warranty is not really going to help very much. Now, reportedly already, Rolex does try to avoid selling more watches to flippers, and that's Rolex's prerogative. I don't know whether or not that's true. Someone with more inside knowledge could perhaps tell me that. A company can sell in many ways to long-term customers if it prefers to do so. That's their decision. I am neither here nor there about decisions in relation to this. And it's really a normative decision. I'm focused more on the practical issue of whether it will even work. So overall, I don't think the strategy is really going to be that helpful. I don't think it's really going to work. I don't think it will be practically operationalizable, nor do I think it will really do very much to stamp out the secondary market. I think it might quieten down the amount of stock on the market for the first 6 months, but then as soon as the 6 months breaks, you might get more stock, and/or you just get some stock on the market at really high prices to begin with, ironically undermining the initial intention. Now, those are my thoughts on it, but if you have any thoughts about these measures taken to restrict flipping, let me know that in the comments below, because it would be interesting to hear your thoughts about whether people even should be flipping watches or how one would go about preventing it. And otherwise, it'd be great if you check out my website, luxuryprofessor.com, where I've got some of my watches for sale in case you happen to be interested in them. And otherwise, I very much hope to see you for future videos as well. Bye.